There are moments in life that refuse to fade away. No matter how much time passes, no matter how many new faces appear, some memories keep returning, like ghosts that refuse to leave. For Yaman and Demet, that ghost has always been their story. A story that started on screen, but soon became too real to be just fiction. When Erkensi ended, many thought it was the closing chapter of a fairy tale. But for those who saw the way they looked at each other, the quiet tension, the sudden laughter, and the subtle touches that weren't written in the script, it was clear something deeper was hiding beneath the surface. Years passed. Can moved on to Italy, becoming a phenomenon across Europe. Demet built her own empire in Turkey, taking on challenging roles and winning hearts. They both grew, changed, and followed separate paths. Yet, even now, their names seem impossible to separate. Every time Demet appears in a new project, fans flood the comments, "Where's Can?" And every time Can gives an interview, someone inevitably asks about Demet. It's as if their connection refuses to die. And maybe, deep down, neither of them wants it to. In recent weeks, something strange started to happen. Whispers began spreading online, rumors of a message, a late-night call, a private voice note. A few fans claimed to have seen a cryptic quote in one of Can's stories, quickly deleted after just a few minutes. The words were short, haunting, and impossible to ignore. "This isn't over." Was it meant for her? Was it a coincidence? Or was it Can's way of saying what he couldn't say years ago? Insiders close to the actor say that the last few months have changed him. Those who've worked with him on set say he's quieter, more introspective, and more selective about the people he lets close. "He's focused," one source said. "But sometimes you can see something in his eyes, like he's fighting with a memory." Meanwhile, Demet has been spotted in public events, smiling, glowing, radiant as ever. But even the most perfect smile can't hide what's underneath. Friends close to her reveal she's been nostalgic lately. "Sometimes she listens to old music," one said. "And sometimes she just stares at her phone for a long time before putting it down." And now, with Can's message echoing across social media, the silence between them feels heavier than ever. It's not the silence of two people who have moved on, it's the silence of two souls who never really said goodbye. For Yaman, silence has always been his weapon and his weakness. He's not the kind of man who easily shares what's inside. Behind the sculpted confidence and the polished charm lies a man who has learned to hide emotion beneath control. But lately, that control seems to be slipping. Those close to him say he's been revisiting old places, cafes, studios, even streets in Rome that somehow remind him of another time, another life. He looks around as if he's searching for something, or someone, one Italian journalist observed during a recent shoot. He's not the same Can we saw a year ago. There's a melancholy in him that wasn't there before. The world knows Can as the disciplined actor, the intense heartthrob, the man who reinvented himself in Italy. But few know the version of him that once laughed uncontrollably between takes with Demet. Few remember the spark in his eyes when she entered the room, or the way he'd break character when she smiled at him. Time has a strange way of distorting memory. It makes you believe you've moved on, until something small, something meaningless, brings it all back. Maybe it was a scent, a song, or a photograph. Maybe it was the sound of her voice in an interview he wasn't expecting to see. Whatever it was, something triggered that line, the words he posted for the world to see. "This isn't over." It wasn't a public declaration. It wasn't even meant to be poetic. It was raw. And that's why it hit so hard. Fans immediately connected the dots. Within minutes, social media exploded. Is this about Demet? Did he finally admit it? Are they talking again? The message was deleted soon after. But screenshots had already spread everywhere. In fan groups, on Twitter, on Reddit threads dedicated to the pair's history. Everyone had their own interpretation, their own theory. Some believed it was just nostalgia, an emotional impulse written in a moment of weakness. Others were convinced it was something more. "He wouldn't post something like that for no reason," a fan wrote. "He's too careful with his image." That message was personal. Meanwhile, the Turkish press jumped on the story. Headlines screamed across entertainment pages. Can Yaman's mysterious words to Demet, "What's behind this isn't over?" Reporters reached out to both camps, but neither side commented. Not a word from Can's team. Not a word from Demet, but silence, as we've learned with these two, says more than any official statement ever could. Behind the glamour, the projects, the success, there's still something unresolved. Something that lingers, like smoke after a fire. And maybe that's exactly what makes people so obsessed with them. It's not just about fame or beauty. It's about two people who lived something real, and no matter how far they go, that truth keeps chasing them. And somewhere in Rome, as the night settles in, Can sits alone on his balcony. The city glows beneath him. He holds his phone, scrolls through old messages, pauses on one name, then locks the screen again. He takes a deep breath and whispers to himself the same words that once shook millions online. This isn't over. For Demet Özdemir, the message hit like a quiet storm. She didn't comment publicly, she didn't like or repost anything, but those who know her say she didn't need to. Her silence said everything. When she first saw the post, it was late. She had just returned home from a long day of filming. Her phone buzzed repeatedly. Notifications, messages from friends, screenshots from fans. At first, she ignored them. But when she finally opened one of the images and saw Can's words, "This isn't over," she froze. Her heart began to race. For a few seconds, it felt like time stopped. It was as if all the years between them vanished. The cities, the distance, the silence, it all melted away, leaving only that single, powerful sentence echoing in her mind, because deep down, Demet knew. No matter how much she tried to move on, some stories refused to end. Some people become chapters that life keeps reopening. She sat on her couch, staring at the screen, feeling a wave of emotions she thought she had buried long ago. Anger, nostalgia, pain, and something she didn't want to name. She wanted to convince herself it didn't mean anything, that it was just a coincidence, a random post. But she knew Can too well for that. He was not impulsive. If he wrote something, it was deliberate. It had meaning. That night, she couldn't sleep. Her mind replayed old memories like fragments of a dream, the laughter on set, the way he looked at her when cameras weren't rolling, the warmth of his voice when he called her Demet. And then, the silence that came after everything fell apart. Friends say she tried to distract herself the next day, throwing herself into work, keeping busy, posting cheerful photos, but even then, something was different. Her smile looked softer, her eyes more distant. "She's not sad," one stylist said. "But she's not fully here either. It's like she's thinking about something else all the time." The Turkish media, of course, wasted no time. Within hours, the story was everywhere. Reporters waited outside her home, hoping for a reaction. But Demet, always composed, simply walked past them with her head held high. No words. No denial. No confirmation. Just silence. Yet inside, that silence was loud. People close to her said she spent the following weekend alone, avoiding social events. She read messages from fans, many of whom begged her to talk to Can again, while others warned her not to reopen old wounds. But love, real love, doesn't listen to reason. It lingers, quietly, stubbornly, like a song that never stops playing. And somewhere between pain and pride, Demet found herself whispering to the empty room, as if answering a question only she could hear. Maybe, it never really was over. Outside, the city continued to move, lights flickering through her window. But in her heart, something had shifted. The message she didn't ask for had reopened everything she tried to forget, because sometimes, one line is enough to bring a whole story back to life. Days turned into weeks, but the tension didn't fade. Instead, it grew stronger, almost like a thread pulling them towards something inevitable. Every fan account, every gossip page, every entertainment portal kept repeating the same question. Asterisk, will they meet again? Asterisk. At first, it seemed impossible. Their worlds were miles apart. Can was in Italy, filming a new project, constantly surrounded by cameras and fans. Demet was in Istanbul, promoting her latest series, smiling for interviews, pretending that everything was fine. But life has a way of crossing paths when hearts still have something to say. Rumors began to swirl about a secret event, a private gala in Rome, celebrating the release of an international project. The guest list was small, exclusive, but somehow, both their names appeared on it. Nobody knew if it was a coincidence or fate playing one last trick. When Ken arrived that night, he looked calm, but his eyes told a different story. He greeted people politely, smiled for the cameras, but every time a flash went off, it was as if he was looking for something, or someone. The music played softly in the background, laughter filled the hall, and yet, beneath the noise, there was that silent question hanging in the air: would she come? And then, she did. Demet entered the room quietly, wearing a simple black dress that seemed to outshine everyone else. The crowd hushed for a moment. Even the photographers hesitated. She didn't need an announcement, her presence spoke louder than anything. And when their eyes met across the room, just for a few seconds, the years between them disappeared. No one knows what passed between them in that glance. Maybe it was forgiveness. Maybe regret. Or maybe it was simply recognition, that kind of silent acknowledgement between two souls who once loved and lost and still carry the echoes of what they were. Later that evening, they stood on opposite sides of the terrace. The Roman night wrapped the city in gold. Ken turned slightly, his glass trembling in his hand. Demet looked up at the sky, pretending not to feel the weight of his gaze. And for a brief moment, time froze again. A few whispered words were exchanged, too soft for anyone to hear, but enough for her to close her eyes for a second, as if those words cut deep. Then she smiled faintly, turned away, and walked back inside. He didn't follow her. He just stood there, staring into the night, his reflection flickering in the glass door. Some say that was the moment everything ended. Others say it was the moment it began again. A few days later, fans noticed something new on Ken's profile. No photo this time. No quote. Just a simple black background with 3 words written in white. Not over yet. Within minutes, it went viral. The world erupted in speculation. Was it another message for Demet? Was it closure? Or was it his way of keeping the story alive, a story that refuses to die? No matter how much time passes, Demet didn't reply. But that night, she posted something of her own, a single heart emoji, half red, half broken. No caption. No context. It was enough, because for those who have followed them from the beginning, this was more than gossip, it was a saga. A love story too real to fade, too strong to be forgotten, and too painful to end. Maybe they'll meet again, or maybe they'll keep walking separate paths. But one thing is certain, what they had, and what they lost, will always live on, in their eyes, in their silence, and in those haunting words that started it all.